My husband buried my son alive. And blamed me. My hands are shaking as I tell you this, honey. Even now, 2 years later, I can still feel that cold metal under my fingertips when I dug into the earth that night. The shovel hit something solid with a clang that echoed through my bones. I dropped to my knees in that fresh grave dirt. Didn't care about my arthritis. Didn't care about the pain shooting through my joints. All I could think about was my Marcus, my baby boy, trapped somewhere in the dark. Marcus. Hold on, baby, I whispered, afraid to speak too loud in case Harold heard me. The moonlight caught my tears as I clawed at that dirt like a woman possessed, uncovering the corner of that old blue toolbox from our garage. The one Harold had probably figured nobody would miss. Inside, so faint I almost missed it, came 3 weak knocks. 3 hours before that moment, my husband of 50 years had stood in our living room with soil under his fingernails, telling the police, "My wife buried our grandson alive. I tried to stop her, but she's been having episodes. Dementia, you know. She doesn't know what she's doing anymore." Now, as those sirens got closer and flashlights started dancing between the trees behind me, I knew I had maybe minutes to save my grandson and prove the truth. Before they found me there, alone with what looked like evidence that could damn me forever. Let me tell you how I got there, child. Because this story, my story, it needs telling. 6 months before that terrible night, I was still pretending everything was normal. You have to understand, I'd always taken pride in my sharp mind. 40 years as head librarian, the first Black woman to hold that position in our county. I'd organized thousands of books, remembered every policy, could tell you exactly where anything belonged. But lately, the stories in my head were getting all mixed up. I'd find myself standing in the kitchen with flour in my hands, no memory of why I'd taken it from the cabinet. Found my car keys in the refrigerator once. Marcus, sweet boy, would find me like that and just gently guide me back to what I was doing. Never made me feel foolish, never raised his voice. "Maybe we should get you checked out, Grandma Eve," he suggested one afternoon when he found me staring at the same crossword puzzle I'd started 3 times. "I'm fine, baby," I told him, but even I could hear how uncertain I sounded. Just tired. When the doctor's appointment came, Harold went with me like he always did. 50 years of marriage. And that man had been by my side through everything. Or so I thought. Dr. Patel was kind but direct. "Mrs. Washington, the tests show early-stage Alzheimer's disease." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Are you sure?" I whispered. "The tests are conclusive. We caught it relatively early, which gives us options. With medication and lifestyle changes." But I stopped listening. Instead, I watched Harold's face, expecting to see my own devastation reflected there. What I saw instead made my blood run cold. Relief. Plain and simple relief. The drive home felt like a funeral procession. Harold had the radio playing our old Motown favorites, but they might as well have been dirges. When we pulled into our driveway, our home of 45 years, Harold broke the silence. "It's not so bad, Evie. It explains everything. The confusion, the mood swings. At least now we know what we're dealing with." The way he said, "We" made me feel like the loneliest woman on earth. That night, I heard him on the phone with his brother James. I stood at the top of our stairs, gripping that banister like my life depended on it, listening to my husband plan my future like I was already gone. "Yeah, it's official. Alzheimer's. Early stage, but it's there." A pause. I know. I've been thinking the same thing. The house is in both our names, but with her condition. Well, there might be ways to protect our assets. For Marcus's sake, you understand. Our assets. This house my grandmother helped me save for, penny by penny, when no bank would give a young Black couple a fair loan. The house where I raised our daughter Sarah, where Marcus spent every summer, where 3 generations of memories lived in every creaky board. Harold was already making plans like I was dead and buried. What Harold forgot, what everyone seemed to forget about the quiet librarian who kept her head down and did her work, was what I'd really been all those years. Back in the 60s, when I was 23 and working at the Colored Branch Library, I wasn't just stamping books and shushing children. That library was a safe house, honey. A place where information moved both ways. I learned to read people like I read books, to spot lies like I spotted misfiled cards, to remember details that could mean the difference between life and death. During the worst of the civil rights years, I helped coordinate safe houses and messages. I had to learn to watch, to listen, to remember everything while appearing to notice nothing at all. When you're black in the South in 1963, your survival depends on seeing everything while looking like you see nothing. Those skills never left me. If anything, getting that diagnosis sharpened them, made me hyper-aware of every glance, every whispered conversation, every change in routine. I started noticing things about Harold that I'd been too trusting to see before. How he'd gotten protective of his phone 2 years ago. For security, Evie. How he'd taken over all our finances when I'd always handled them. Less stress for you, honey. How he'd started taking long evening walks, always alone, always with that phone. But most important, I noticed how he talked to Marcus. My grandson was brilliant, headed to Howard University on a full academic scholarship to study journalism. Going to tell stories that matter, Grandma Eve, he'd say, eyes bright with possibility. But Harold had been filling that bright mind with doubts. College is expensive, son. You sure you want all that debt? Maybe you should stay local, help take care of your grandmother. She's going to need more and more help as this gets worse. I watched Harold plant those seeds of guilt in my baby's mind, and I recognized what he was doing. Harold wasn't just planning to control our assets. He was planning to control Marcus too. That boy would inherit everything eventually, and Harold wanted to make sure he'd be the one pulling the strings when that time came. And then it hit me like lightning. Harold wasn't just planning for my decline. He was planning to help it along. The accidents started small, subtle things that could have been my condition getting worse. My medication, Dr. Patel had been very clear about taking it at specific times, started disappearing from my weekly pill organizer. Harold would find the pills in strange places and shake his head with such sad concern. Look where you put your pills, honey. In the sugar bowl this time. It's not safe. But I remembered organizing those pills every Sunday night, same as I had for 20 years. I remembered the satisfying click of closing each little compartment. Then came the night with the gas stove. I woke up at 3 in the morning to that hissing sound. Gas flowing but no flame. I found Harold right behind me as I turned it off. Evie? What happened? Did you come down to cook? His voice was perfect, concerned but not surprised. Honey, you could have killed us both. We need to talk about getting you more help. But I remembered checking that stove before bed, same as I had every night for 50 years. Remembered the satisfying click of the safety switch, the silence that meant everything was secure. That's when I knew I had to fight back. I started keeping a journal, hidden inside a hollowed-out copy of Jane Eyre. Something I'd learned from the resistance fighters who used to meet in my library. I wrote down everything. Times, dates, Harold's whereabouts, my own state of mind, the condition of the house when I went to bed versus what I found in the morning. But I needed more than a journal. I needed proof. And proof meant trusting the one person Harold thought he had wrapped around his finger. Marcus. One evening while Harold was on one of his mysterious walks, I sat that boy down in my little reading nook, the same corner where I'd helped him with homework since he was 7. Baby, I need you to listen to me very carefully. I need your help with something, but you can't let your grandfather know. Can you do that for me? Marcus studied my face with those intelligent eyes he'd inherited from me. You're not confused right now, are you, Grandma Eve? You're sharp as a tack. I am, baby. And I need you to help me stay that way. I told him everything. About Harold's phone calls, the financial maneuvering, the pattern of accidents that weren't accidents. I watched understanding dawn on that young face, followed quickly by anger. But why would Grandpa Harold want to hurt you? Sometimes people love what you can give them more than they love you, I said, hating that I had to teach him this lesson. Your grandfather's been planning for my death longer than I've been sick. Marcus was quiet for a long time. Then, what do you need me to do? Over the next month, that smart boy helped me gather evidence. He installed a hidden camera app on an old tablet, left it on the kitchen counter like a broken device nobody paid attention to. He helped me set up a safety deposit box at a different bank, where I stored copies of documents and my journal. Most importantly, he helped me investigate Harold's evening activities. What we found was worse than I'd imagined. Harold had been meeting with James and a lawyer, planning to have me declared incompetent. Harold would get power of attorney, sell our house, and move in with James. Marcus would be encouraged to skip Howard, to stay local where Harold could control his inheritance until the boy turned 25. But the worst part was the insurance policy Harold had taken out on me. Right around the time he'd started insisting we update our financial planning. If I died within 6 months, he'd have enough money to live like a king. Grandma Eve, Marcus whispered as we looked through the papers, he's planning to kill you. I nodded, trying to keep the fear out of my voice. But we're going to stop him first. The plan I came up with used every skill I'd learned in 73 years of living. It had the patience of a librarian, the cunning of a resistance fighter, and the fierce love of a grandmother protecting her family. First, I started acting more confused around Harold. More dependent. More helpless. I asked him to handle all my medications, all my meals, all my decisions. I watched his satisfaction grow each day as I seemed to decline exactly as he'd planned. But in secret, I was building my case. With Marcus's help, I documented everything Harold did when he thought I wasn't watching. We recorded his phone calls, followed him on his walks, gathered financial records showing how he'd been positioning himself to take control. Then I set the trap. I let slip to Harold that I'd been thinking about my will. Maybe I should leave everything to Marcus in a trust that Harold would manage, since the boy wasn't ready for that responsibility. Harold's eyes lit up like Christmas morning. That's very wise, honey. When do you want to see the lawyer? Soon, I said, trying to sound vague. But Harold, I've been having the strangest dreams lately. Dreams about being buried alive. Isn't that silly? Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe fear. But I could see him thinking, calculating, adjusting his timeline. The final piece was the bait I knew he couldn't resist. Harold, I need to tell you something, I said one evening, putting on my most confused expression. I think I hid money. A lot of money. From my grandmother's estate. I was saving it for Marcus, but I can't remember where I put the key to the safety deposit box. Greed and panic warred on his face. How much money, Evie? Almost $200,000. I wrote down where I hid the key, but I can't find it anywhere. I'm so confused about everything now. That night I heard him whispering urgently to James on the phone. Harold was running out of time. If I died before they found that money, it would disappear forever. But I also heard something that chilled me to the bone. Harold was planning something for the next night. Something final. Time to make my stand. Harold's plan was brutal in its simplicity. Let's take a walk, Evie. Clear your head. He led me to the edge of our property, where our yard met the little woods. There, hidden among the trees, was a hole he'd dug earlier. 6 feet long. 3 feet wide. Deep enough to hide a body. Harold. I breathed, my acting meeting genuine terror for the first time. What is this? I'm sorry, Evie. I really am. And for a moment, I almost believed the sadness in his voice. But you're getting worse. You're dangerous. Last week you almost burned the house down. You're going to hurt Marcus or yourself, and I can't let that happen. Harold, please. It'll be quick. He pulled a small gun from his jacket. I'll tell everyone you wandered off. Got lost. With your condition, they'll believe it. They'll find you eventually and we'll all grieve together. As he spoke, the truth hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just about money or control. Harold was enjoying this. He was enjoying my fear, my helplessness, the complete power he had over me. How long had he felt this way? How many years had I been married to a man who saw me as nothing more than an obstacle to overcome? I know about the insurance, Harold. I know about James, about the lawyer, about everything. His expression didn't change. I figured you might. You always were too smart for your own good. That's what I loved about you once. Now it's just inconvenient. He gestured with the gun toward the hole. Get in, Evie. Don't make this harder than it has to be. But I had one more card to play. The money isn't real, Harold. He paused. What? The 200,000. I made it up. You're lying. Am I? You've been through every document we have. If I really had that kind of money hidden, you would have found some trace of it by now. For a moment I thought I had him. Then his face went hard and cold. I know you're lying, Evie, because I know you better than you think I do. You're not that good at deception. He raised the gun. You always underestimated me, just like everyone else. Poor Harold, devoted husband, not too bright but reliable. But I've been planning this for 3 years. My blood turned to ice. 3 years. Ever since I noticed you starting to repeat yourself, forget little things. I had you observed by a private doctor. Dr. Chong confirmed you were developing dementia 6 months before you ever saw Dr. Patel. You knew I was sick before I did. Harold smiled, and it was the coldest thing I'd ever seen. I suspected. And I prepared. The insurance policy, the legal arrangements, even some of your more dramatic episodes, I helped those along. The ground shifted under my feet. You've been drugging me. Small doses in your evening tea. Nothing harmful, just enough to create confusion, mood swings, memory problems. Made your decline seem faster and more severe than it really was. He was proud of himself. This monster I'd been married to for 50 years wanted me to know how clever he'd been. The stove, the missing pills. All me. Though you did have some real episodes too. The disease is real, Evie. I just helped it along. He gestured again with the gun. Now get in the hole. I've told you everything you wanted to know. It's time. But I'd heard enough. I'd learned what I needed to know. Time for my final move. What Harold didn't know was that Marcus was hidden in those trees, recording everything on his phone. What he also didn't know was that Dr. Patel had received my voicemail that morning. The one where I shared my fears about Harold's behavior, and had already contacted the police. But most importantly, Harold didn't know that I'd never planned to face this alone. As Harold waited for me to climb into what he meant to be my grave, I reached into my jacket and pulled out 2 things. A GPS tracker connected to my phone, and a small recording device that had been running since I left the house. Smile, Harold. You're on tape. His eyes widened, then narrowed. Doesn't matter. Who's going to believe a woman with Alzheimer's? Even with a recording, they'll say you were confused, paranoid. Maybe, but they'll believe Marcus. That's when the flashlights lit up the clearing like daylight. Marcus stepped out from behind a tree, phone in hand, followed by 2 police officers. Freeze. Drop the weapon. Officer Martinez shouted. But Harold didn't freeze. He laughed, a sound that would haunt my dreams for months. You think this changes anything? She's sick. The boy's just protecting his confused grandmother. I was trying to stop her from hurting herself. Then Harold did something that made my heart stop. He pointed the gun at Marcus. My wife has been having violent episodes, he called out to the officers. She made the boy help her dig this hole. She was going to bury him alive and blame it on her condition. I felt the world tilt as I realized what Harold was doing. Even caught red-handed, he was flipping the script, making me the villain, him the hero trying to save our grandson. But I had spent my entire life preparing for moments when the truth needed protection from those who would twist it. Harold, I said calmly, there's something you need to know. I pulled out my phone and showed him the screen. Remember WKRX? The community radio station where I volunteered? They've been broadcasting our entire conversation. Live. Harold's face went white. That's impossible. Every word you said about the insurance, about drugging me, about planning my murder. Thousands of people just heard it. It's also streaming on social media. Marcus set it up for me. But the real twist wasn't the broadcast. It was what I said next. Harold, you made one crucial mistake. Dr. Chong may have been thorough, but he wasn't my only doctor. Harold stared at me in confusion. Dr. Sophia Martinez, Officer Martinez's sister. She specializes in misdiagnosed cognitive conditions in elderly patients. I've been seeing her secretly for 2 months. The truth came out in a rush. The symptoms you observed, the ones that made you so confident, they were caused by the drugs you were giving me. Mixed with my blood pressure medication, they created symptoms that perfectly mimicked early Alzheimer's. I stepped closer, no longer afraid. I've been clean of your poison for 6 weeks, Harold. My mind is perfectly clear. Dr. Patel's tests were wrong because you'd been drugging me for months before the appointment. But Dr. Martinez's tests tell a different story. Harold was shaking now, the gun wavering. That's impossible. The diagnosis was wrong. Just like you were wrong to underestimate me. Officer Martinez moved closer. Mr. Washington, put down the weapon. It's over. But Harold had one last desperate play. You want the truth? He screamed, all composure gone. I've hated her for 30 years. 30 years of being married to the brilliant librarian, while everyone forgot my name. She had everything: career, respect, love. What did I have? A job at the post office and a wife who made me invisible. His voice echoed through the trees, carrying decades of hidden venom. When she got sick, I thought finally I'd have control. But even sick, she was still smarter than me. Still one step ahead. He looked at me with pure hatred. So yes, I planned to kill you. And I would have enjoyed watching you die. Officer Martinez moved in quickly after that confession. As they disarmed Harold, he made one last lunge. Not toward escape, but toward me, as if he could still somehow finish what he'd started. Marcus stepped between us and caught Harold's arm. It's over, Grandpa Harold, my brave boy said quietly. You lost. 3 months later, I sat in that courtroom every day, watching the man I'd shared a life with reveal his true nature to the world. The radio broadcast had made Harold's confession famous, but the courtroom revelations were even worse. Dr. Martinez testified about my true mental state and the effects of long-term poisoning. The private investigator Harold had hired testified about surveillance and commitment plans. James, facing charges himself, turned on his brother to save his own skin. But the most powerful testimony came from Marcus. That young man stood in the witness box with dignity beyond his years, describing months of watching his grandfather manipulate me, gaslight me, slowly destroy my sense of reality. He played the recordings we'd made, walked the jury through the timeline of insurance policies and financial scheming. My grandmother is the strongest person I know, Marcus said during his testimony. Watching my grandfather try to destroy her was like watching someone tear down a library, book by book. Harold's lawyer tried to paint him as a desperate caregiver driven to extremes by the burden of caring for an Alzheimer's patient. But when Harold took the stand himself, his mask fell completely away. She always had to be the smart one, the important one, he snapped under cross-examination. Even sick, she acted like she knew better than everyone. So you decided to kill her because she made you feel inferior? I decided to end a situation that was destroying our family. Someone had to make the hard choice. Someone had to decide whether she lived or died. Someone had to. Harold caught himself, but too late. When my turn came to testify, I wore the navy blue dress Marcus had bought me, the same color as my old librarian uniform. I sat straight, spoke clearly, and told my story with the same precision I'd once used to catalog books. The defense attorney tried to rattle me, to make me seem confused or vindictive. But I looked at that jury and spoke the truth. I've organized the largest library in this county for 40 years. I helped coordinate communication networks during the civil rights movement. I raised a daughter and helped raise a grandson. I leaned forward slightly. Do you really think a woman with that background would be confused about the difference between an accident and attempted murder? The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Life in prison without parole. But for me, the real victory wasn't Harold's conviction. It was what came after. Marcus graduated valedictorian and went off to Howard as planned. At graduation, he dedicated his achievement to my grandmother, who taught me that wisdom is knowing how to use your strength to protect the people you love. Dr. Martinez published a groundbreaking paper on my case, leading to new protocols for diagnosing dementia and preventing elder abuse. The radio station created an annual award in my honor for using media to expose injustice. But most importantly, I got my life back. I sold the house, too many dark memories there, and bought a small place near the university. Returned to volunteer work, this time helping elderly people who'd been isolated or abused. I spoke at conferences about believing seniors when they report concerns about their care. Marcus visited every weekend. We'd sit in my new garden, talking about his studies and dreams. One afternoon as we tended my roses, he said, I'm thinking of changing my major to law, elder law specifically. That's wonderful, baby. But make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. I'm not letting one evil man define my purpose, he smiled. I'm letting one strong woman inspire it. A year after the trial, I got a letter from Harold in prison. I almost threw it away unopened, but curiosity won. I don't expect forgiveness, he wrote. But I need you to know I loved you once. Somewhere along the way, that love became resentment, then something worse. Watching you outsmart me reminded me why I fell in love with you 50 years ago. You were always stronger than me. I read it twice, then burned it in my fireplace. Some apologies come too late and cost too much to mean anything. But as I watched those flames consume Harold's words, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. I was free, not just from his plans for my death, but from 50 years of making excuses for a man who never deserved them. 2 years later, at 75, I published my memoir, Buried Alive: How I Escaped My Husband's Deadly Plot. It became a bestseller and was made into a TV movie. During the book tour, a reporter asked if I regretted staying married to Harold so long. I regret he chose evil over love, I replied. But I don't regret believing in the possibility of good in people. The alternative, living in constant suspicion, would have been its own kind of death. What would you tell other elderly people in similar situations? I thought carefully before answering. I'd tell them that being old doesn't mean being powerless. Your concerns are valid, your instincts are sharp. If something feels wrong, trust that feeling. Get help. Document everything. And remember, people who truly love you support your independence. They don't try to destroy it. I paused, then smiled slightly. And never underestimate the power of a well-planned counterattack. Now, at 76, I'm working on my second book, about the resistance networks that operated out of segregated libraries during the civil rights movement. I've also started a foundation providing legal help to abused elderly people. I've got at least 20 more years of fight left in me, I told a journalist recently. Harold thought my story was ending. Turns out, it was just getting started. As I sit here tonight in my garden, cup of untainted tea in my hands, surrounded by flowers I planted with my own capable hands, I think about how Harold tried to bury me alive. Instead, he helped me bloom. That's my story, honey. A story about surviving not just attempted murder, but a marriage to a man who saw me as less than human. A story about discovering that even at 73, you can still fight back, still win, still start over. And most importantly, it's a story about the truth. That being elderly doesn't make you weak, being diagnosed doesn't make you helpless, and being underestimated can be the greatest advantage of all. Harold Washington is spending the rest of his life in a cell, his story over. Mine? Well, darling, I'm just getting to the good part.